Hey guys, welcome back to The Art of Craftsmanship. My name's Dustin, and today in the shop we're going to be doing an easy kind of household project. We're going to be making a wooden Lazy Susan. Now, we picked up the hardware from a local hardware store. This is the metal part that actually spins, and then we have some handles that are going to go on as well. This is about $15, so pretty cheap. The rest of it we're going to be using what we have in the shop for. And I'll be cutting the wood out with my shop table saw and a jigsaw and maybe some hand tools just to kind of get the shape that we want. But it's something you could easily do with a jigsaw and a circular saw, or even just regular straight hand saws and all hand tools. It's a nice, fairly simple project. Now this is going to be for my brother's wife, and she wanted a laminated wood top. So let's head over to the wood shelf. We'll see what we have. We'll bring that back to the table and start our design. Cherry or maybe Ipe. Some more Ipe. That's already in strip. Oak, cherry, some black walnut. I'm going to lay out my design on this piece of paper, and that's because I don't have all of the wood I need in the full length I want. Now I want to make this Lazy Susan 20 inches across. Now all of my pieces of wood don't have to be 20 inches to be able to do that. I just need that very center wood to be 20 inches. But because I don't have all my wood that is 20 inches, we need to figure out where on the circle we need to have different pieces of wood that are the right length. So say my center is here, I have to have a 20-inch piece of wood in the middle, but if I move over 6 or 7 inches to one side, then I can measure top to bottom and figure out how long a piece of wood I need in that spot to be able to make my full circle. 3/4. So our design will look like this. We're going to have this largest piece of cherry in the middle. This is 5 inches. Then we'll trim this in half, so we'll have ash here. That's 1 1/4 inches. Then we'll use this mahogany. That'll be a 2.5 inch piece. Then another piece of ash that'll be 1 1/4 inches, and that'll leave us with 2.5 inches at the end, which will be cherry again. So we'll have cherry, ash, mahogany, ash, and cherry. I have my cut list now, so I know all of my measurements for each piece. So we're going to cut them down to size on the chop saw, and then we'll rip them down on the table saw. Now that I have all the ash cut to its width, I'm going to trim it down to the height. Now these are going to come down to the height of the cherry, which is 1 1/4 inches. These were mahogany railings, and I had to trim off the kind of decorative side first that held on. Now I got to trim off the other side. Now there's these bull noses, but the space right between them is 2.5 inches, so I have to rip the bull noses off both sides. It should leave me basically the exact width that I need for my pieces. I just marked a center line for each piece, and that does two things for me. That, you know, gives me the ability to make the final circle as big as possible, but it also gives me a reference point to match everything up. So now when I'm going to go back through and I'm going to plane all the sides to make sure everything is nice and flat, it'll give me that reference point to be able to work what was the top, what goes from left to right, and now I can keep them all in the same order. I'm going to be using my Stanley No. 4 hand plane to plane down the sides to make sure everything fits up really well. And I just taped down a 500 and 1000 grit piece of sandpaper. I'm going to be using that to clean up and sharpen the blade of this. I'm going to be using my honing guide to make sure I get a really nice, good angle. So that way I'm nice and sharp, a good angle to be able to plane everything nice and clean. My angles I have set for 25 degrees. And to make sure I'm still doing that same 25 degrees, I just bring my planer blade out 2 inches from the front edge, tighten that down, and now when I lay it down on the sandpaper, it will match that angle and give me that 25-degree bevel. Right. I clean my bevel up. That's nice and ready to go. I'll just lay it flat on the flat surface, clean this up as well, and it should make a really nice edge before we strop it. When you're stropping an edge, you always want to pull away from the edge. You don't ever want to work toward it because usually your strop's made of leather, and if you push toward it, you're just going to cut into your leather. And this is the rough side of the leather. And laying it flat down, pulling back and lifting up just the slightest bit to make sure I'm right on that edge. I'll probably do 10 or 15 of these, and then I'll flip over to the other side. Lots of pressure. All right, this is nice and sharp, razor sharp. We're ready to put this back into the plane. We're going to plane each of the edges of each board to make sure they're really nice and flat to get good connection for our glue up. I'm going to be laying my clamps down and putting my wood on top of them. That way I have the clamps that are on the bottom. You always want to do alternating clamps on top and bottom of anytime you're doing a side-to-side glue up. That way you don't get cupping. You don't get your glued up piece kind of cupping one way specifically. I'm just making sure I have my dry fit up ready to go, and I'm marking on my boards where they're overlapping so I don't get a ton of extra glue on the outsides. But you want to make sure you get your nice dry fit, everything looks good and ready to go before you start your glue up. Making sure that I'm going back and getting these little hairs off my glue. Make sure that I'm going back and using my glue brush to make sure that glue is completely covering the surface. I want to make sure I do that because, you know, really there's no point in just guessing or making sure, you know, if you don't do this, you're probably going to get gaps and they're just not going to hold as well. Now, since I'm not using any like mechanical fixes in between each one, I want to make sure I'm getting a really good glue surface. And I'm specifically using wood glue. I'm using Titebond 2, which is a water-resistant glue. And that's just designed to hold really well. So much so that the wood glue is going to be holding stronger than the actual wood itself. Good trick for cleaning off glue is to use some sawdust that you have laying around the shop and just rub it on there, and that will clean off the big, you know, the big drips that are on the surface. Got all the drips cleaned off now, and I'm just checking everything, going back through everything one more time, making sure everything's nice and tight. And we'll go ahead and let this dry and glue and set up completely overnight, and we'll come back tomorrow and continue on the project. Looks great. Everything stayed nice and flat on the top and bottom, no cupping. So next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna work on getting the top and the bottom flat. Let's see. Actually, let me go here. Oh, I can't go there. Oh, maybe I can. You got there, buddy. You look happy. Oh, he was down low. I hit him hard and he flew over there. I'm gonna get him seeds. I don't hear him. Well, it took a decent amount of time to make sure both sides are really flat and clean now. Both sides are clean. We were able to take a look at both sides and see which pattern we like. We also defeated the crazy Asian hornet that made its way into the shop, I think. I did whack it and hit the wall somewhere over there, so we're hoping it doesn't come back to life. But now we can move on to cutting the circle out. It looks like we're at about a 16th under, 19 and a half. So we are looking good, plenty big enough. It's looking really good. I like that. I'm going to move over to my belt sander. I'm going to clean up all the way around the edges and finish down to my line with the belt sander first. Then we'll move outside and we'll use the palm sander to finish all the surfaces. All right, well, that's all that we sanded up to 220. Looks beautiful, feels really nice. I'm really happy with that. So now we can take this back inside and put it on its base. All right, well, if you're interested in making a cutting board, you can just stop watching the video now because it's done and there you go, you'd have your cutting board. But we're actually gonna make this into a Lazy Susan. So let's cut out the base and then we'll attach it with the hardware so we can get our nice spinning surface. I pre-drilled my holes and I'm going to countersink the opposite side with a Forstner bit. You can see I made a mark on my bolt here, and I'm going to grind down past that because I want to make sure that when I put this in, when I clamp it all together, that this bolt doesn't go down at all past the bottom. We have these nice cabinet handles that Devin's wife picked out, and she wanted these because this way you can actually pick this up and carry it from the kitchen into the dining room when you're serving food on your Lazy Susan. So we'll go ahead and mark the holes and drill them out. I have all my holes drilled and ready to go for all my hardware and to be able to attach everything. But before I do that, I want to oil the board and the base. I'm going to do both with mineral oil. Oh, man, how beautiful does that look? Wow, look at the grain on that. All right. So they don't make it easy to get to these, so what I figured is I have a knife here, a knife blade, which I can actually get underneath and wedge it underneath of the bolt on the bottom side. So then I have some pressure here. I can put the nut on top and then just use my socket to tighten it down. Guys, this turned out really nice. Let's give it a try. works perfectly. So thank you so much for watching. This has been a fun day. It's been a fun build and a good way for me to test my own skills as a woodworker. You know, doing something like this with hand tools and getting all your lines to line up is really not as easy as it looks, but it's definitely a good test for you and something you can do at home to make something that could look really beautiful and is a really beautiful gift for somebody. This is actually a gift for my sister-in-law, who it's her birthday, so happy birthday to you. And thanks so much for watching. It's been a fun couple days working on this. If you haven't already, make sure you like and subscribe. Check us out on Instagram and Patreon, and we'll see you guys in the next video.